most of Jupiter Ascending. Once a month I do a movie night with my patrons, and this month we watched the 2015 space opera Jupiter Ascending, directed and written by the Wachowskis. It was a film that I knew has like this big female and queer fan base because it is such a female focused driven movie, but I also remember critics saying it made no sense. I kind of wanted to do like a small, hopefully short-ish video about Jupiter Ascending, what I think makes it such a dynamic film, why I think it has endured so much among this female queer fan base, and what I think it was ahead of the curve in sort of its conceptualization of what space epics could look like. Jupiter Ascending is about a young, undocumented Russian immigrant character named Jupiter Jones, played by Mila Kunis, who happens to be the reincarnation of the matriarch of a royal alien family made up of 3 shitty kids, Balaam, Kalik, and Titus, who form the house of Abrasax, which sounds like a weird Abra evolution, like we're the house of Abracadabra.
Her ladyship, the Abrasax sovereign.
The former queen wrote her future self into her will, which makes Jupiter the legal owner of Earth. Balaam is very whispercore unhappy about this.
I want Miss Dunleavy found, and I want her dead.
And wants Jupiter to be killed in order to prevent her from attaining the title because Earth is super financially important to the alien world, I guess? Whatever. Enter Kane Wise, played by Channing Tatum, our human-dog hybrid love interest who is hired by Titus to grab Jupiter. Fighting happens, bees, gravity shoes, and a lot of alien bureaucracy. Like, George Lucas must have been so jealous when he saw this movie and he was like, this is what I was trying to do in the prequels! Taxes, titles, who owns what?
Yeah, I can't touch this without a tax number from the Revenue Review.
In terms of the Wachowskis themselves, this work represents their last film collaboration together before they would go on to make the Netflix series Sense8, and then moved on into doing individual projects, with Lily working on the Showtime series Work in Progress, and Lana is currently working on the 4th Matrix movie with Keanu Reeves. When they speak, you can see they are very aware of how their film differs from a lot of the usual science fiction blueprint, because it focuses on a female lead. But there is never a sequence where she needs to be broken in order to become tougher. Jupiter is allowed to be casually tomboyish, but not in a sense that she fully rejects her femininity or that she is automatically inclined to be a muscle-bound gunslinger a la a lot of space people. She is very much allowed to be a strong female character without embracing all the things action films usually expect from that role. If you compare Trinity to Jupiter, you can see that there is certainly a range of female strength that the Wachowskis are pulling from and are working with. And they're trying even to undo some of their own natural inclination to focus more of the attention on the sort of wolfman, dog boy, soldier character of Kane. Just because he gets the cool action sequences doesn't make him the protagonist. Yes, you're very aware of how the industry works. I think there's a funny sort of corollary subject, which is make the female more like a male, which is also very common right now at this time period. We were trying to hold on to a female who didn't have to act like a male to be the protagonist. Yeah, a lot of people said, hey, why don't we make Kane the star of the movie and not Jupiter? We were like, no, this story's about Jupiter. I really enjoy this statement because I think it speaks to the way that we as a society are constantly trying to understand what is feminine strength, what makes a woman strong, and how we're constantly trying to evolve past typical gender norms while also subverting expectations, while deconstructing, while rebuilding. And I think that Jupiter Ascending was an attempt by the Wachowskis as a way to sort of see how people would respond to a heroine who is not naturally inclined to be the things we expect a female heroine to be. And I think in that alone, we see what the allure is of Jupiter Jones and why she seems to resonate so strongly with female audiences, even those who do agree the movie's a tad bit ridiculous. Lana Wachowski spoke at length that a lot of the appeal of writing Jupiter was to create a female character who is sort of like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Strong and brave, but not necessarily a warrior character or an action girl. Just someone plucked from nowhere and asked to be brave, asked to rise to the occasion. We were super curious if you could make a movie that had the kind of character that Dorothy is in The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz was kind of a movie we were thinking about when we started thinking about Jupiter. We love The Wizard of Oz, and there aren't movies like The Wizard of Oz right now. We were like, could you take a character like Dorothy, who is female, and who goes on this journey and doesn't have to beat people up? She doesn't have to fight constantly, or use weapons or kung fu in order to be the hero. Can she just use empathy? As an audience, we have the opinion of if this works or not. But in many ways, I think the Wachowskis were ahead of the curve in this mindset. We as feminists are still really trying to explore, as I said before, what it means to create a fictional action heroine that is strong. Think about Game of Thrones, where it took years for people to see Sansa as a strong female character because she wasn't wielding a sword. Or Catelyn Stark, who was constantly being held accountable and hated for one moment of selfish cruelty in a cast of characters that include rapists, mass murderers, colonizers, and the generally incompetent. When women in certain genres don't perform strength the way we expect them to, they are seen as underwritten or weak. In the case of Jupiter Jones, I don't see her as either weak nor underwritten. For the most part. We know her backstory, her family situation, her love of the stars, her money situation, that she is brave at times and wants to be in love. We also know, most importantly, her star chart.
But I was born in the house of Leo. With Jupiter rising at 23 degrees ascendant.
The movie also shows her growth and ability to read situations as she maneuvers from one erotic sibling to the next, and her ability to prioritize the greater good over herself. In Act 3, where Balaam kidnaps her family and Jupiter is given the option to give up the Earth or save them, she chooses to save the Earth.
You can't touch the Earth even if you kill me. Is that right?
That planet belongs to me. It is my right.
Not anymore.
You have no idea what you're doing.
I am making sure that whatever you do to me and my family, you're not able to do to anyone else.
We can't even get our politicians to care about the Earth right now, y'all. That's a great character. Donna Dickens for Uprock said it well. Hollywood has tried to capture what it thinks is the right model for science fiction heroines. Basically, the most competent sci-fi women fall into the strong female character trap that strips anything feminine from a character and replaces it with Arnold Schwarzenegger with boobs. Jupiter Ascending gets it right. Women don't always want superhuman robots to look up to. We want to be the same klutzy nobody who is cossed and petted and told we're special despite all evidence to the contrary. Doesn't that initial description remind you of someone? Bella Swan. Now, the Wachowskis do handle this much better than the racist Twilight lady, but the appeal is there. Not to mention that everyone wants to have a character that they can see themselves in, that they can, Control V themselves onto. For some people, it's Star-Lord, and for others, it's Jupiter Jones. It's that same, I can be the hero even though I'm not always an on the surface heroic character. Jupiter Ascending is far from a masterpiece, but it fills a niche that many critics and filmmakers don't seem to realize even exists. The desire for a fun, frothy Guardians of the Galaxy style movie that doesn't include sexist jokes or a male protagonist. And yet it's already being co-signed to the garbage heap of Hollywood flops, rather than where it really belongs, the garbage heap of our hearts. Speaking of hearts, Jupiter Ascending should have been a television series, first of all. It is clunky at times and very dense, but honestly, as someone who loves sci-fi that just kind of plops you in and wants you to kind of figure things out as we go, a lot of the unexplained things worked for me just fine. The thing that took me out of the movie is this.
I have an uncanny ability to fall for men that don't fall for me. It's like my internal compass needle points straight at Mr. Wrong. Maybe it's my genes. Maybe I have defective engineering too.
Where the hell did that come from? Writing a romance where two people who have never met fall in love amidst planetary turmoil and stop a potential genocide is hard, but it can be done. But that requires the movie slowing down a bit to actually let the characters talk about themselves, allow their commonalities to show, and let whatever chemistry got them cast together in a screen test shine. Nothing about why these two were cast opposite each other works. Mila Kunis is a good actress, great actress, and she is throwing out all the smolder at Tatum, but he is not picking it up at all. Tatum has proven himself to be a much better comedic himbo actor than a serious action star, which has actually probably given him a much longer lasting career presence in Hollywood than if he had just been a leading man. But even if the two did have good chemistry, the writing just never establishes a reason for the attraction beyond Jupiter loves dogs.
I love dogs.
It doesn't help that they spend maybe 2 quiet scenes together before this scene of their attraction happens, so it's uncertain where any of this chemistry or attraction comes from. Kunis has better chemistry with all 3 of her children, and Kane is supposed to be the Toto in the story, but Toto is a day one dog, okay? He's been with Dorothy since the beginning. Her relationship to Toto is why she had to like throw hands on that mean tall lady in the beginning of the movie, because she's trying to come for her man. Kane just sort of appears into the plot, and his story is much more aligned with Sean Bean's character than Kunis, which could have been hot. Do that. They tell us that he once been a member of the royal family. Why? We don't know. Literally all they had to do was steal from InuYasha and make Kane somehow emotionally connected to the past live version of Mila Kunis' character, and that he failed to protect her, and he has spent all of these years, since they know that they can live forever, waiting for her to return so he could correct his error. They fall in love, and that's why he takes this mission, and that's why they have this clear attraction, and that is why his actions lead to being stripped of his wings and exiled, because it was still him failing to help a member of the family. All of that would make this relationship seem more interesting. As it stands, it just feels like compulsory heterosexuality, like all up in your face. And it's weird.
When the exact same genes reappear in the exact same order, it is for us what you would call reincarnation.
But how could I be a reincarnation of your mother unless your mother was from Earth?
My mother was born before your first cities were built.
I think on almost every visual level, this movie is superb. There are so many scenes where they're like going around with all of their like flying on their little ships, and I'm just like, now this is pod racing. I quote Phantom Menace too much. The action scenes are of course superb. They use a lot of practical effects. I love that you can actually see this movie, like it's not too dark. There's a lot of detail being done, and oh my god, Jupiter's gowns, the outfits. Mila Kunis Inez is wearing gowns, bitch. Like, she is wearing outfits to the she looks so good in every state. Her makeup, her eye shit. I was like, listen. This to me is what I want in a space production. Just up there. And there were so many scenes where I was like, that's the Holdo maneuver. Like, there are just so many things where I was just like, yo, the Wachowskis would have ate Star Wars if they could have just been given the opportunity. And I think their career is so interesting because you have these two trans women directors who have really helped shape the way sci-fi looks. And yet, as they lean more into a very overt part of them that is not at all can be, you know, capitalized by the male gaze, that has, you know, you've seen their career dwindle as a result in terms of having the same fever that they used to have, unless they, you know, directly call into the Matrix. And I just think it's interesting that they really wanted to explore this kind of female character, because I think that we are all trying to perform femininity in ways that is trying to be revolutionary. Like, we're not allowed to just exist within our femininity, within our womanhood. And I mean womanhood all encompassing, not just cis womanhood, because there are ways that we are expected to be a hero, to be a warrior. Like, when a woman picks up a sword, we're supposed to feel something from that. When a woman chooses not to kill, that is seen as like, well, why did you kill him? And I know that's always my first instinct as well, because I was raised on Xena, so I was raised to slaughter. Chaotic bisexual. That's who I am. But I do think that Jupiter Ascending is visually just ahead of things. It looks so much like even Dune. Can you imagine the Wachowski Dune? The Wachowski Dune would be just, I'll eat it all up. They would make them sandworms look tricked the fuck out, okay? They are people who love sci-fi. And you can tell from this movie that these two women are fucking nerds, yo. They are making some D&D, some chaotic World of Warcraft. They are doing that shit. And I would love to just see them have the opportunity to do more of this original work. Even if you don't like Jupiter Ascending, because I do think that there are issues in the act. Again, most of it's romance. I think also that having to go through all the 3 fairy tale, you know, hit points is a lot. But at the same time, I was never bored during the movie. I just think that the scope of it was just too big for one standalone film. But I definitely would love to see more of Mila Kunis as Jupiter. I think that that's probably one of her best roles, besides, you know, Black Swan and Sarah Marshall, obviously, because I think that Mila Kunis is able to play all of the sides of Jupiter. And I think because, you know, Mila Kunis herself being someone who is an immigrant, who can relate to this character, who is glamorous and beautiful when she's dolled up, but could also just be like a really, really hot girl in the streets, you know? Like, Mila Kunis is a homie, you know? You see her and you automatically can connect with her character. So I really wish this movie had gotten a little bit more clout. And again, I don't mind the confusions lately. I think of like Hyperion by Dan Simmons, where it's like you read that first couple chapters and you don't really know what the fuck's going on. You gotta go with the ride, yo. It's not a perfect film, but I think that its concepts about how we need to slowly allow women in these films to not always be defined by the usual trappings of masculinity is a really interesting thing, something that I think a lot of other stories could do so. And I love that, unlike how them writers did my girl Sansa, they never make Jupiter be cruel as a way of showing her be strong. She always shows mercy. She always tries to be kind. She isn't a cruel person, because being cruel doesn't mean that you're strong, especially when you're fighting a bunch of cruel people. Those are my thoughts on Jupiter Ascending. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for all your support in my video about colorism in comics. That blew up and I was totally gobsmacked. So I'm really excited about doing this. Girlhood is still coming. This video has so much quotes and citations, oh my god, and I'm working on a bunch of other projects that are coming up soon, so a lot of content. I'm just trying to make sure that everything can be of a certain quality and caliber, because I want every video to feel like a mini Princess Melina experience, and so I hope we're succeeding. Thanks again to my Patreons, and we will be doing another movie night soon, a horror themed one, because it's about to be October, y'all. So we're gonna have some horror content, some magic content, some witchy content coming up soon. So if you want to be able to vote for what's gonna happen on movie night and watch a movie with everybody, you know where to link and follow. All right, love you guys. See you soon. Bye. I create